Hey everyone, welcome into One Resource Floating, where I say a lot of cliches and they may be good, they may be not. But today we're going to talk about making your time count when you practice a card game, a video game, anything like that. We talk about a lot of flesh and blood on that channel, so there'll probably be some flesh and blood examples that show up in here, but a lot of these will have relevant pieces for pretty much anything. So let's talk about, let's get right to the topic. So the first thing I'm going to say was something that a high school teacher of mine told me. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Only perfect practice makes perfect. Going to this, if you're doing 30 games a day, if you're jumping on Talishar or jumping on TTS, or if you're firing up and going on quick play on this game, you're going to end up doing the same thing that you've been doing. That mindset, that what you're doing right now is just giving you, routines. So unless you optimize it, unless you make that time count, then you're not really experiencing what you need to as a whole. So when you come in to practice, when you come into play tests, when you are coming in to learn and get better, first off, you should have goals. What are you trying to understand? The goals, we should have SMART goals. You probably heard that phrase. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely. Make all your goals where you can hit them, you understand them. Okay, so what's the goal I have for this playtest group? I want to understand if I destroy X person's equipment, how does that affect them in the long run? So I'm going to be playing Dash. I'm going to use the powder keg. I'm going to start with the powder keg. I'm going to boost. All of a sudden, I do a magnetic. They have to block with all their equipment. I powder keg. How is that affecting their game? What do I want to destroy? Maybe I have goals. I'm really just trying to hamper them in the long run. Maybe you're playing a fighting game or, a video game of some sort. And if you're a Street Fighter player, maybe you want to see is Flowchart Ken, I'll just throw that out there. Is Flowchart Ken a viable thing for me? And how can it mix in with my current play style? Well, first thing, your goal is you need to learn Flowchart Ken. You need to know what that is. Can you do a Shuriken? Can you do a Hadouken? Well, you need to start learning these moves. Make sure they're down pat and you can move on. So the next thing, have a group, have some people, have some friends. If you play in a weekly, make sure that everyone's on board, join a group, get in a Discord server, whatever you can do to have reliable people to play with. Groups should be uplifting and help you get better. And likewise, you need to do that for the group. I'm not saying okay, so first off, I love to troll. I'm a troll. I'll admit that. But that doesn't mean that you can't also have compassion and empathy and care about the people in your circle. Unfortunately, I grew up in an area where we love to razz each other. We love to just pick on each other. You need to understand the difference between being toxic and being an aid to your neighbor. So coming in and having some people that you collaborate with is going to help you get better, and it's going to help them get better. It's a big plus if you have that rival, because the rival is someone that you don't want to beat you. That doesn't mean you're happy for them if they win, but really you're a little upset. You don't want them to win, but that's good because it's going to propel you to learn to beat them, and it's going to propel them likewise if they view you the same way. And that's how this relationship needs to work. It's going to help them get a little better than you. This is also going to help your scene excel, because the better people are, people take notice of it. People learn from people in their scene. people learn from people in their community. And I don't just mean like immediate community. I can mean like a larger community as well. So everyone, most people know the story of the 4 Minute Mile. So Roger Bannister in 1954 ran a 4 minute mile. It was like 3 minutes and like 59 seconds and some odd milliseconds. Just barely broke it. Afterwards, in 2021, I think like it's higher than 1,500, but over 1,500 people have broken that, and it's also been lowered by 17 seconds. And that 4 minute mile was like, that was a big deal. Like that was near impossible at that time. And there are things in this time that were like, yeah, we're getting more advanced. Things are going to be different. You know what? There are things that are happening today that 50 years from now are going to seem, well, you know, that was like 70 years ago, but they're going to seem minuscule. So realize how your community affects what you'll do when someone takes note of something that someone does. So like when someone wins at Worlds or a big tournament, like you're going to take note of that. You're going to see like, okay, they had these things in their deck and this was able to help them because they use XYZ strategy. So this next part, I'm going to talk about a little bit of why I am a good fit to talk about this and what I know about it. So my background when I went to undergraduate was outdoor or adventure education at a minor in psychology. I did my master's in experiential education. So the base word of it, most of you probably are like, what's experiential education? The base word of experiential is experience. So it's learning by doing. So, which is shorten it out. That'll make it simple for everyone. So taking this process of what you're trying to learn, what you're trying to do, and learn from it. Make it better. Make it impactful. So John Dewey was someone, there were tons of people, but John Dewey, he was a psychologist. He did a lot of education. John Dewey was like, he was the man. He did so many things back in his time. And we're going to talk about his role in experiential education and what he wanted and thought was really good. So the first we have this relevancy factor. How do we define relevance? It's you see something and it is relevant to you. If you're playing, so speaking to Flesh and Blood, if you're playing UPF matches every week at your armory, or you're playing blitz matches with, you know, Cavdian, and then all of a sudden you go to CC tournaments, there are some things that you can learn from each of those, but they're not practicing what you need to practice. You're not learning what you need to know. If you're going on quick play and you're playing Street Fighter and you're on, I don't know, let's say you're playing Guile, but you are, you know, in tournament you're playing Chun-Li, that's not really relevant to you. You need to understand what you're doing, what you want to get better on. You also need to understand relevance is knowing your bad matchups, finding ways around them. If you can't beat Ryu, and all of a sudden you decide, I'm just not going to play Ryu. Whenever I see Ryu, not going to do it. So you have made that not relevant to you and you're not going to overcome it. So whenever you see a problem, so if you're a parent out there, the first thing, if your kid comes in crying, what do? You ask them what's wrong. You try to understand like what is happening right now. And then you go to fixing the problem. So what's wrong? What's happening? What can I do about this? Sometimes fixing the problem is just like, you know what? It's fixed. They just need to cry it out. I was like, we don't have any ice cream. It's like, well, no one cares. Move on. And sometimes it's like, I lost this thing that I really need to have. It's like, well, okay, well, I saw it here last. Do we check here? You check here. You put things under here. You can go through those lists. So relevance really needs to be like you understand it, you see it, it's tangible, and go after it. So experience. With experience, you're not Can't. Okay, let's try this again. With experience, it's not about knowing what to do solely, but it's knowing about why you do it. So when you come with experience, you need to understand, what rules you have, know when you want to break those rules, know when you can break those rules. And that is going to help you figure things out. So I fought an Icelander the other week, something recently, fought an Icelander. So the Icelander matchup, if we're going to talk about that, the Icelander had me pretty much on the ropes, and they, extended themselves. This is in the game Flesh and Blood, and typically they can, as an Icelander, they have the ability, they're a wizard class. They can play anything not on their turn and on their turn. But typically with Icelander, she has a caveat that most things are played from Arsenal to have instant speed. Otherwise, she can only play on her turn. There's also an equipment called Storm Striders that helps her do that. She used up Storm Striders, so didn't have that equipment anymore. Already did the Arsenal thing, so got me down to 1 HP. So the way this works is you need Arcane Barrier or something to be able to block it. I had Arcane Barrier 3, so they just needed to come in with one attack that had at least AB 4, and I was finished. So now that they've used Storm Striders, they're left in the situation where they couldn't respond except on their turn. So my goal at that point was make sure they did not have cards in hand, so they could not do that. And there were a couple turns I just had to bide time and okay, here's what I need to do. This is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to make sure they don't have cards in hand. And if something goes over and they have a 2-block, we're good. So all of a sudden we came to this moment where I drew up a hand. I could have done the same thing again and made sure that they were just not going to have cards. This was only going to go on so long, and one of us were going to brick, and I wanted this to end. So rather than doing what how do I say this? I could have done 2 attacks. They would have had to block the 2 attacks with 2 cards each, so all cards out of their hand. Then we go to the next turn, and it just starts up that cycle over and over again. But I had a reaction to give something +2. And the Icelander was down exactly to 3 or 4 or something. It was just perfect. So I came in with this attack. So they're in a position here. It's okay. I can block it all out with just 1 card. So I had this reaction. So they declare their blocks. I react and make it over the top. The Icelander could have been in a different position, or if they had a defense reaction, if they had any kind of response to that to make it stop. If you didn't have Aetherize, which who plays Aetherize really, that could have really stopped my plan. But coming back here, this is a good way of thinking I applied the scientific method to this really. This has been going on, and this is the route we will go. I looked at my graveyard cards I've used, I've played, and I knew what was left in my deck. So sooner or later, either the Icelander wasn't going to be lucky, or I wasn't going to be lucky, and we needed to have a decision how that was going to be. So rather than playing not to lose, not to not lose, I played for the win. So I put up a situation because I thought, looking at if I was this character, if I was this player, I would block out perfectly, move on. They did just that, not expecting me to have the Ring of Razors because it's so late in the game. Who holds on? I would have played that if I had the chance. But it's so late in the game. They play it. I play the reaction. That's the game. You need to come in and have this experience of when you're going to break your rules, what you're going to do, the situations, how they're going to play out. But what's most important on it is reflection. And you need to ask critical questions about your time. We always break this down if you're, in the team building or adventure therapy world, or if you're a guide and you have maybe some, if you address the participants in a way that is a little bit more advanced, you have these 3 questions that you're going to ask. So there's what happened. It's past tense. So what was the specific thing that just happened? And you can say this like when you screw up, when you miss a tunic trigger, what happened? When you do anything, it should be what happened. And you can just say these quickly to your brain as you're going on. So you don't have to like constantly stop and have all of these like things that you're going to say. So what happened when this occurred? So I remember when I went to nationals, I ended up on one of the streams. I got so nervous. They were like, "Oh, you have to wait to start." I just said, "What happened?" Or sorry, I said tunic trigger. I was going first. I was like, "Okay, don't miss tunic, don't miss tunic, don't miss tunic, don't miss tunic." First thing I did, Arsenal pass. Boom. Nothing about tunic anywhere. And I immediately did that. And I was going tunic up until that point. And I immediately said, well, I just missed that trigger, even though I told myself I didn't want to do that. So you have the what happened. And there's so what. So this is a present tense situation. What is happening in your current situation? I missed the tunic trigger. How is it going to affect me? Does it affect me now? No. How could it affect me? How could it affect me down the line? This is going to be a thing that comes in like turn 3. All right. Or I found myself getting nervous and I was missing triggers. Now what? What am I going to do about it? What am I going to do to ensure that doesn't happen again? And this is a situation where I didn't do that because, this whole match, I was a mess because it was like I was on stream and I had all these dice and everything else I was doing. I missed frostbites. I missed an insidious chill trigger. I missed polar blast, dominating something, and my opponent blocked the 2 cards. The judge said just rewind it and do it again. He was really understanding, and thank you to him. But it's one of those things like I just needed to at one point sit down and ask myself, what just happened? Okay, so what's happening now because of that? What am I going to do to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Or what am I going to do differently in the future? Properly reflecting on that allows you to make those decisions rather than just rely on the rules and patterns. You're going to think critically, you're going to know why, and you're going to be able to accordingly, what am I saying? You're going to be able to make the decisions better. Whether you win or lose the match, should you ask questions on it? Yeah. Whether you win or lose. If you're the winner, ask questions. If you're the loser, ask questions. The problem, you ever heard someone say like, oh, when you win, you don't learn anything? Well, that's bull. You should be learning something when you win. You're not winning anything because you're not asking yourself the questions. You're not putting the effort to make yourself better. When you win, you don't learn anything. That's kind of true because the winners don't put in the effort. It's the losers that you see, sweating and putting all the hours in to make everything count. So ask questions, reflect on the match. So like, let's say you're playing a card game. When I played this, like think back to a pivotal point in the match. When I played this card, how did it make you feel in the moment? Oh, what could this card do to you? Like in the perfect storm of things, how would this affect you? Are there any situations where you just wouldn't care? And then you need to apply that to not just that match, but like look at the meta too and see how that affects everything. And that goes in part having the community. You need to have someone to like bounce those questions off because you're not going to think all the questions and answers yourself. The community is really important on that. And with your other person, like you need to find out about them too and realize what you can take away from them. Ask those players those questions. Ask them like find out about them. Like, wait, hey, what decks do you struggle with? What do you do well against? What do you play typically? What events have you went to? How did you do? And that's not to say that you're sizing them up, but you need to understand, like, if I have, everyone's going to have strengths and everyone's going to have weaknesses in this game or any activity. If I have some strengths and some weaknesses, what strengths do you have? What weaknesses do you have? Do they complement each other? Do we need to find someone to fill in the gap for X, Y, or Z? Understand your community and what you can do. And you can go through and apply all of these things. And I always recommend like that scientific method type thing. So like I might have said this before, doing the same thing over and over again is the definition of insanity, right? Everybody's heard that cliche saying that. So I played Lexi. Her toughest thing is either she draws a brick hand and she literally can't do anything, or fatigue. If you fatigue out Lexi, she's done. There are certain heroes that have the ability to fatigue her out very easily. It's a scientific method, like applying that. So first you need to see, like, you need to realize there's a problem, right? You need to realize, okay, I'm getting fatigued out. Second, you need to understand that it's relevant. It's like, I'm not going to top anything while this is happening. Then you need to want to fix it. You can't just play like Talishar match, online match, quick play match again and again and again and hope something changes. You can't like just spam, Hadokins all day and be like, man, this is really not working out for me. So talking with Flesh and Blood. So fatigue, I put in a card called Last Ditch Effort. If there's no cards in your deck, it gets +3 and go again, but it's expensive, costs 3. It actually has done well for me. I did decide that it can really not be fun if my opponent is playing Oldhim, because what do? They just ice react, and then I have a card that goes back in my deck, and then the other Last Ditch Effort is now 4 instead of 2 attacks of 8. So it's really hard to clinch that like last bit of damage that I need. So that's really unfortunate. So going through there, like Last Ditch Effort, great against Dramai, great against Bravo. All of a sudden, Ice Oldhim, it wrecks me. Well, there's the other piece of, does Ice Oldhim have the ability to stop that? Like, and this is really like, should be checked. How can you get your deck, pay attention to your pitch deck, and really like walk through everything. Okay, so intermission. All right, intermission over. Back to it. Really ask yourself and your partner, like, do that scientific method, like, ask like how things affect it, like sideboard. Do you want to go like, if you're doing a card game, first or second in a match? I played Smash Brothers, and one of the things I would do, I play Zero Suit Samus. I'm really sorry. People out there probably don't like me for that, but for that it's hard. But one of the things right at the start of the match, if I just run right off the platform, if I'm playing like on Battlefield or Pokemon Stadium 2, run right off the platform and press Z and then do the Zaire with the whip, and it's a couple extra damage. People usually do one or two things. They either stand on the platform and wait, or they're going down to the platform to get on the low ground. And if they're going into that, then they're going to be hit because you're going to be falling with that Zaire. There's also the chance that they come into you. So the only option really is if someone backs away, which typically they don't want to back to the edge at the start of a match, or someone jumps, or someone stands in place and shield. Which, who shields at the start of a map? Or when the start of the game, like who's going to start up their shield? So a lot of things that weren't relevant that could happen. So I took the probabilities and made them made a good guess for every one of the matches going in. Now, if someone knows me, they're gonna get through that. Yeah, ask how you should start a match. Go first or second if in a card game. Like, all these things, go in, ask yourself these questions. And people hit plateaus. So plateaus aren't this magic barrier that you have. Like, everyone's like, oh, hit the wall, I'm not able to get through this. That plateau or that wall is you not understanding something. It's not like, it's not some magic force that's like this happens when I try to get anywhere and I'm not that good. It's, unfortunately, you're at a spot where you need to put in the time and effort to get by that. And people don't always plateau at the same area. And it's not fair. They're really not. But I've seen people that come in and, I'm just going to say, like, they're lacking severely. And they're not able to, when they do these events and they go to things, you're like, man, good on them for trying. I just hope that they get there sometime. And then I've seen them like completely turn around and be like immense and like so good because they've put in that time, because they hit this plateau and then they figured out what it was they didn't understand, what it was that was stopping them from being better. And then they got better. This whole thing of this experiential education, this goes into this transfer of learning model. And this is something that was done by Michael Gass. And but it's really important here. So you have 3 types of transfer. There's specific transfer, non-specific transfer, and metaphoric transfer. So that specific transfer is going to be like, you're in the middle of something and you have a skill that you've learned, and how you're going to adjust it to like this thing that's like it. So you might play a hero if you're in a game. Like you might play Guile, you might play Ryu, you might play Iyslander, in order so you can understand what Iyslander needs to do. When do I need to block? How can Ryu hit me? From where? How far across the screen? How can anything happen here? What can I do about it? So that's specific. So you have a topic and you're relating it. You have a non-specific transfer. That might be something to where, you think, maybe you think like chess or checkers. Like, when you're playing Flesh and Blood, when you're playing whatever, are you just trying to play aggro and really like beat someone down? And what are the things you need to learn about that? Or are you trying to play a long game and really beat them out? Are you playing fatigue, or are you playing like just to annoy someone for a little while? When I played fighting games, I ended up doing a session where someone coached me, and it was interesting. They said I threw out a lot of attacks that the opponent wasn't there. So what I always done was I learned, I used to play paintball in college, and I always learned that laning is something you do, because someone's usually going to run from X to Y. So you shoot from X to Y. You shoot in the middle of there. So they have to run out and run into your lane of paint. So that was kind of the thing I did there. Like, I never went into someone like too far, but I always just sat there and like, okay, I'm going to throw these out. Okay, you going to come in? You going to come in right now? Huh? And then, they're trying to look for patterns or ways to get in. So that was one thing that, a coach said to me was like, I needed to, stay still, don't show your hand, don't show what you can do, and then act. Excuse me. And then you have metaphoric transfer. Metaphoric transfer is literally like, I used to work in adventure therapy. Like, that was our bread and butter. Like, okay, we took someone out and they took them on a week-long canoe trip, or maybe they went climbing. How did that make you feel? What did you need to do to overcome this? how is that like working in, or living in the everyday world? What tactics can you take away from here? Like, well, I really had to hold on and push through on this, or I really thought I couldn't do this anymore, and there was a light at the end of the tunnel, and I was able to weather the storm, and yada yada yada. And I'm sure everybody here wants to hear all that, but that's also going to come into, like, when you're playing, like, the metaphoric transfer, like, that's more important than you think. When you play through a game and you're having all of these things happen, whether you're throwing attacks or defending or doing grabs or playing cards, what effect does it have on you as well as your hero? Like, went through all this, and I was just throwing attack after attack after attack. That fatigue, usually, if I'm playing cards and the other player is playing a fatigue match type thing, or trying to mill, like, I usually get fatigued out too. Like, when I have nothing left in deck, there's usually like this spot of like, I just feel empty on the inside. Like, that, yeah, might be a way that you metaphorically transfer it, but like thinking through that, like, what is this situation and how does it impact you and what effect does it have? But that comes into also having your team and your group. And when you succeed, your group is going to succeed. And when you lose, your group is going to lose. And it shouldn't be like all of this comes back. You really need to be thinking of your community. Your community may be one person. It could be that neighbor that you're trying to get to invite. Like, think through all of these strategies and really dive into how you can make the immediate area around you better. When you're talking to them, you really need to be respectful and give feedback. So I understand, like, there are people out here who know a lot and have been working with a game or any game, and they're great. But this goes into like knowing why, or understanding, like, well, you know what, you just need to put X in there and put X card in your deck, and this will solve your problem. You should just do this strategy. Like, well, I don't know that strategy. Well, no, it plays itself. You just do that. If someone has literally like built their deck around like XYZ and they're doing all these things, you need to sit down with them and probably go through everything that they need to do, and not just assume that your way is going to work best for them. Explore, like, okay, this is what you're doing. This is what I've seen. This is what it can do. Okay, well, here's what you do, and here's what this does. Okay, now we need to test it. There's that scientific method again. You test it against X heroes, X players, and really understand what that will mean. There are other ways you can spend your time, just like when you're in the car, or maybe you're at work and you just have like a video playing in the background. You can do content. So, I mean, you guys are probably familiar with content because you're doing it right now. You listen to me talk. Doing content, you can evaluate place by players. You can reflect and ask questions on what they've done. It's what the decision you would have made. You can learn new skills or tricks. You know how long it took me because I did not play a lot of Runeblade players, I guess. You know how long it took me to know that double revel was a thing? It took me too long. So you can, in the card game Flesh and Blood, you can play Revel and Runeblood. If you played a attack and a non-attack, then it'll make 5 rune chants, 5 of these tokens that will deal you 1 damage essentially, unless you defend them a certain way. Well, you can just do an attack and then play Revel and Runeblood. Well, then you also have there's a equipment option that you can instant in another Runeblade card. So you instant in another Revel. They see each other as a non-attack. So you've played the attack. They see each other as a non-attack. So all of a sudden you have 10 rune chants, which is ridiculous. Just devastating. Utterly devastating. but it works. It's something you can do, and that's why you need to watch people and learn like all those little things. Unlike me, you know, coming in and playtesting, like if you've watched people and you understand what they've done and why their lines of play are that way, then it's going to help you pick up on what you need to do as well. I played an Oldhim. He was very good Oldhim. He was able to, well, I think, was it? Yeah, he was able to Oaken Old 3 times in a row. Now, a couple things. You can either think, one, he's cheating, or two, which is what he did do. He pitch stacked it. He set it up so when he hit second cycle, he was going to see the Oaken Old and Earth and Ice card, and he got a Toma Harvest with it, I think, too, on 2 of them. So he set it up purposely so he would see those cards in a row, and that was the right thing to do. And there he took some damage for it, but then he came back, waited, bided his time, and then lo and behold, that came around, and it was devastating. So yeah, be in content, learn from content, learn from other people. Sanity's sake, let's talk here. Have something else that doesn't fight for your attention, especially if you find yourself stewing on anything. Like if you're that person that like thinks about something and takes it to heart, the more you stress on X, Y, or Z, the more you stress on that game, or you lost, or your win, like it's going to be unhealthy for you. And this doesn't mean that like you're taking time away from the thing that you love. This just means like, maybe you have a dog, maybe you have kids, maybe you have a wife or a girlfriend, or like maybe you have another hobby. That's not saying that you have less time that you're investing in the hobby that you're investing in. That's saying that you have something that like, you know what, I need to step back. I can play Mario 3 with my eyes closed. I know that that's a weird flex, but like I don't really play it with my eyes closed, but I can just, it's therapeutic for me. Like I literally can just hit the buttons and play it, and 15 minutes goes by and I beat the game and I don't even know what happened. Or I can sit there and play the long play, and I go through all the levels, like really mix it up sometimes. I don't know why. That was like a memory. I did that when I was really young, and I guess maybe that just stuck with me. I think that, that's something I can just sit down and do. I can play Mario 3 like it's my job. Have that. Have something you can fall back on, something you can do, something to just decompress when something happens. Those reflection questions are important. And I'm not going to say that they shouldn't happen. However, if you find yourself, if you're a moody person, if you find yourself like, well, it happened because I sucked and I wasn't doing any good and I felt like I was just losing, then that's not going to do you any good to address those questions. Come at it to a point where you can understand and where you can think through things and be specific on it. The last thing I'm going to say is you need to go to events. If we talk Street Fighter, Daigo Yumhara, he was a huge Street Fighter player. This is important for, if you're in a card game, if you're in a video game, whatnot. So here's this quote. Tournaments are a playground for people who practice for growth. It's where they show off their achievements. Once I made that realization, I finally started making continued growth my goal rather than winning. Games enrich my life by allowing me to grow as an individual, and that's what motivates me to keep going. So he saw that, I think originally, if I remember right, I haven't read his stuff for a while, but this was just, you needed to win. He needed the next win for a while. And it was unhealthy. But when he realized that, I can learn from here. Tournaments aren't like I need to win this or I need to not lose this. Tournaments are a place for me to go in and learn and figure everything out. you've probably heard this saying, you don't go to the gym when you are fit, you go to the gym to get fit or to stay fit. So coming in here, you need to understand tournaments, armories, weeklies, whatever you want to call them, whatever you have in your medium. Like, they're important to your growth. Yes, I understand that you paid, X amount of dollars and you went here and you just got bodied. You just got completely destroyed, and it feels bad. It really does. But that is time that you're learning from people. That's time that you can make valuable. So you need to put the work in here, and this needs to be completely up to you to do a little bit of this. But that time can be really fruitful and can really mean a lot, because people are playing to win those settings. They're playing differently. When I played at a weekly versus when I played at like a monthly for tournament for like Smash Brothers, like, people did different things. People in the weekly sometimes went through their habits, but everyone was sitting upright in their chair, leaning forward. Like, this is the time where you're focusing to win. Flesh and Blood events, armories may feel pretty casual, like they're laid back. Like, I never go in like stressed out on armories. But if you go to a culling, you sit down across from someone, you say hi, you may be pleasant, they may be pleasant, hopefully you're both pleasant, but at the same time, like, there's an expectation, like, one of us are going to win, and I want it to be me. Taking that time away to not just reflect on the outcome of the match, but also to reflect on what happened in the match, the decision making, what was going in there. Were they counting on, like, what? I bet he has a reaction that can just utterly destroy me. Or, if I'm playing Smash and I'm a Bowser player, then I just need to get a stock ahead, and then I'll do the suicide move, and they can't recover. There are a lot of things that you can have a plan for. There are a lot of things that you can do. There are a lot of things that you can reflect on from those tournaments. So I would say make those a key thing, and they will be very helpful to you. I realize that I've talked a long time, and hopefully maybe some things came out to you and there's some messages that got across, and I hope that this has been a fruitful time for you. Whether you play Flesh and Blood, whether you play another card game, whether you play, Street Fighter or Smash or Dragon Ball FighterZ, anything, like, the time you put in, like, everyone asks, like, oh, how much time do you put in to, like, get good? That's not really the answer. It's how much. I think that if you put in like 3 hours a week of dedicated, thoughtful, and fruitful practice, that is plenty. However, a lot of people don't put that time in. They don't see it, or they don't know. Make what you're doing, make your time count, make it impactful. And yeah, you'll probably, like, it'll probably be a little more because you want to do it because you're having fun, right? You want to have fun with it. And you don't want to just sit there and grind the whole time, because then that's not fun. But, make everything count. Make every minute, make everything you do. And, like, if you play a match with someone, set aside, like, we played an hour match, or maybe played a fighting game and you played like a 15, 30-minute set. Like, you can set 5 minutes down afterwards to talk to that person and figure out what's going on. And you know what? If you're not going to talk on the fly, make yourself a script, make notes, whatever you need to do. But from here, feel free to comment below if you thought this has been worth it. And if you guys like the video, you can feel free to like it, subscribe, whatever you want to do. The Discord channel is down below, and I hope to really see you guys around, and I hope that this video has been worth your while. Thank you guys very much, and yeah.